Greetings and welcome to the Dennis Prager Show here on the Salem Radio Network. The great Dennis Prager is not with us today, and I am very pleased to be with you today. My name is Bob France. I'm coming to you live from the studios of AM 1420 The Answer, my home base in Cleveland, Ohio. Thank you so much for being with us. To AM 1420 The Answer listeners, thank you for coming back for another dose of what I have to offer today. My show normally runs daily, 9 to 11 Eastern time, here in Cleveland, obviously, and I certainly welcome the opportunity to add new listeners by way of WHKRadio.com or any of the streaming services that you might have, the iHearts, the Radio.coms, the Alexas, through your personal assistant devices, through our own free mobile app, which is AM 1420 The Answer. So if you like what you hear today and you'd like to hear more of it, please join me 9 to 11 Eastern time each and every day, Monday through Friday anyway, as I come to you live here from Cleveland. Thanks so much for being with us on the Dennis Prager Show today. There's a lot of news to get to. I really can't pack it all into the 3 hours that we have, but I'm going to do my level best. I'm going to start in a moment with where Dennis left off yesterday at the end of his program. I'm going to talk about being nice and working hard, or working hard and being nice, whichever of those two racist statements that you would like to put first. You heard Dennis at the end of the program yesterday. It's simply a remarkable thing as we continue to try to figure out how and why so many entities and organizations continue to intentionally divide this country along racial lines, but much, much more than that, along ideological lines, along religious lines, and many other things. We're going to get into that in a moment. Also, in this hour, as a matter of fact, very next segment, it's going to be my privilege to introduce to you an Ohio reporter, a television reporter, an independent reporter really, but working for a Mansfield, Ohio television station, who has been doing some incredible work in the state of Ohio in exposing the state of Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine, who has been taking all of this praise as Ohio's governor for being one of the very first to shut down his state's economy back in March. Governor DeWine has been looked at by many people across the country as the model for how to handle a pandemic, and it's all just so much garbage. And by the way, this is not a partisan statement because I am a conservative Republican and Mike DeWine is a Republican governor. This transcends party. It transcends ideology, and it really, is about common sense, and it is about honesty. And there's not a lot of it coming out of Columbus. Jack Windsor will be joining us to talk about all of the important news that he has discovered, that he has uncovered, quite frankly, through simply homework, good old-fashioned, homework, legwork. He has put in the time, researched the facts about what's going on in this state, and why the state of Ohio, probably like many, many other states, maybe the one in which you are listening right now, why they are so hell-bent on keeping us tied down, if not with outright bans on businesses being open, then severe restrictions which harm those businesses and perhaps will lead to them closing themselves, keeping people living in a constant state of fear. It's going on here in Ohio. It's going on unjustly. One reporter draws the eye roll and the exasperated sigh from Governor DeWine during the daily press briefings. And again, he has made quite a name for himself here in Ohio for his great work, and it's time to bring him to a national audience. So Jack Windsor is going to join us to talk about COVID-19, the responses of state governments, including the one where I am right now, and that is the state of Ohio. But I want to start with some of the actual news of the day, and congratulations to the Little Sisters of the Poor. Congratulations to all religious institutions, religious educational services, schools, religious businesses of any kind. Even if they're not a religious business, but the owner of a particular business has a faith that he follows. And of course, we can always trace this back to maybe the OG of these religious liberty cases, Jack Phillips and Masterpiece Cake Shop in Colorado. But that's not what this is about. This is about the Little Sisters of the Poor. And finally, the Supreme Court has come down with a ruling that we can say, wow, look at that. A conservative originalist ruling. A 7-2 decision, as a matter of fact, that says essentially that nuns don't have to provide don't have to provide birth control or abortifacients for their employees. I mean, that's how insane this has gotten. We saw a very serious blow being delivered by that very same Supreme Court last week when they ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act is expanded to discrimination against genders that didn't even exist, or these mindsets, these mental hurdles that some people have to overcome with respect to their anatomical, biological, physiological, chromosomal sexes. But that those can be used to protect people from quote-unquote discrimination, meaning that Christian, Catholic, or other religious schools that teach, I don't want to keep using the word sex, they don't teach sex, but that teach a belief in God and a belief in what God made us, a belief in science, if you will. How about that intersection here between faith and science? But that schools that teach that men are men and women are women, and that there's one man and one woman that makes up a marriage, et cetera, all biblical stuff that they have to accept, potentially. And an employee who is a male who decides in the middle of teaching, maybe, I think I'm a female now, and starts wearing dresses to school, they have to say that's okay. They cannot require their employees to practice and live the faith that they teach the children. So religious liberty was put into serious jeopardy by that ruling from the Supreme Court just a week ago, and that's one example. Today, some of it was restored. I had a conversation earlier this morning on my local program here in Cleveland with Dr. Everett Piper. Perhaps you know Dr. Piper, or you've heard of Dr. Piper, about this very case because he was a co-litigant in the case. Dr. Piper is the best-selling author of Not a Daycare, the book that really kind of spoke to snowflakes on college campuses and said, look, we are not your parents. We are not here to make sure you don't get your feelings hurt. This isn't a daycare. This is an institution of higher learning. Well, Dr. Piper was a party. He was a co-litigant in the case with the Little Sisters of the Poor that was heard before the Supreme Court. I asked him today for his reaction to what we heard.
When I was president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University, and right after Obamacare took effect and became the law of the land, we sued the federal government and said, no, Oklahoma Wesleyan, by definition, is a pro-life institution. Every employee that I hired had to subscribe to God-defining life, not you, not me, not the government, but God-defined life from conception to completion. Likewise, a Catholic organization, the Little Sisters of the Poor, said the same. Well, as you know, the Obamacare mandate was that we were required to include abortifacient drugs in the health care packages of our institution. Now, in the Little Sisters of the Poor case, this is incredibly asinine. I mean, stop and think about it. It's a Catholic organization, and last I knew, Catholics are pro-life, by definition. I mean, this comes all the way from the Vatican all the way down. Catholics subscribe to a pro-life agenda. Likewise, you don't use contraception. And the Little Sisters are celibate. So there's all sorts of reasons to just say, what? You're requiring an order of nuns to include contraception in their health care? They don't want it. They don't use it. They won't use it. Why in the world is the federal government picking on these poor little nuns? Well,
that was a great question, and it was finally answered by the Supreme Court. The federal government was indeed picking on these poor nuns, not for fun and for games, but to challenge and ultimately defeat religious liberty in the United States. When people have religious liberty, they do not have to abide by the rules of the state. The state wants there to be, the big government, progressive state, wants there to be one faith and one deity, that being the almighty government. They don't want people listening to their consciences and their faith and the belief in, their belief in the word of God through the Bible or whatever the case might be. This isn't specific and exclusive to Christians or Jews, obviously, but it's people of all faith. And this was a huge, huge win. So a blow for religious liberty today, kind of offsetting a little bit the attack on religious liberty the Supreme Court delivered a week ago. And that is, of course, good news. By the way, if you want to hear the rest of that interview with Dr. Piper, and he's brilliant. I speak to him once a week on my local program in Cleveland. He's brilliant. You want to hear the rest of it, you can hear that podcast at WHKradio.com, no matter where you might be, WHKradio.com. The other big Supreme Court decision today, too, that we will talk about in a bit. President Trump's tax returns are fair game. They have to be turned over to a prosecutor. according to the Supreme Court, something he has long sought to hide. So we'll talk about the ramifications of that coming up as well. We'll get a quick time out now, though. Jack Windsor talks COVID-19, the Chinese coronavirus, with us next on The Dennis Prager Show.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was your house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom,
Bedwench,
bootlicker,
black white supremacist,
chucking and jiving,
house Negro,
coon,
Uncle Tom,
coon.
I have a coon award over there. Coon of the Year award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist,
Racial,
Racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black?
America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No, our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
When Bill Clinton, after twice vetoing almost identically worded bills, finally signed the Welfare Reform Act. One of the reasons he got elected is because he was going to be a different Democrat. We're going to change welfare as we know it. He said it during the 1992 campaign and didn't do anything. And then Dick Morris said, when he's running for re-election, look, if you want to win this election, you have to do something to fulfill this campaign promise. So Bill Clinton signed the Welfare Reform Act of 1996. 1996, 1994? 1996, I think it was. And a bunch of liberals, his own party, they were furious. Furious. One of the children's advocates is a woman named Marion Wright Elliman. She stopped speaking to Hillary. They were good friends. Members of the Congressional Caucus said that when this bill goes through, there are going to be people sleeping on the grates outside because they're going to be so poor. What happened? Welfare rolls declined almost 50%, far steeper than the most optimistic projections were, without a corresponding increase in abortion. It turned out a whole bunch of able-bodied people and able-minded people, when they found out they weren't going to get additional money, and when for the first time there were going to be caps on how long you could stay on welfare, they got off the couch and went in and get a job and got jobs. Now, the very same people who were predicting death and destruction, what did they say? Nothing. Not a word. Did any of them admit we were wrong? That we were apparently creating perverse incentives by setting up the welfare state the way we were? Did anybody suggest that they were wrong? No. You see, the left never says we're sorry, never says we're wrong.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric METAXAS Show.
You know, that's one of the significant things in America is we look at past generations through today's filter and today's lens.
Are government schools giving children the education they need? If you think the answer is yes, you haven't asked a parent with a child stuck in a bad school. Cecilia Iglesias, president of the Parent Union, tells her personal story in this week's Prager University video. See it at prageru.com, where we teach what isn't taught.
You know, I'm going to sound like a shill when I say this, but Prager University just might be the very best thing on the internet. I sound like a shill because I'm hosting Dennis's show. That's not why I'm saying this. I say this every time I get an opportunity to on my local show. I'll say it online. PragerU just might be the best thing on the internet. And that's why the internet tries to cancel PragerU. That's why YouTube, Google, and everyone else tries to take them down. 21 minutes past the hour. Bob France sitting in for Dennis Prager. Again, I come to you live from AM 1420, The Answer in Cleveland, Ohio. A little bit earlier this morning on my local program, I spoke with Ohio State Representative Nino Vitale, who said that he thinks Ohioans and people across the country should stop voluntarily getting tested for the Chinese coronavirus. And why?
Voluntary testing equals mandatory lockdown. Now, let me say that again, because this is really important that everybody understands. Voluntary testing equals mandatory lockdown.
He's right. And he went on to explain it. But no better than my friend Jack Windsor explained it to me yesterday in very much the same language. And he joins us now on the Dennis Prager program. Jack, I told everybody before you came on last segment that you have been the most important reporter, the only one who gets the eye roll and the deep, heavy sigh from the governor every time you ask a question or your name is mentioned as the next question at the daily press briefings. That means you must be doing your job well, Jack Windsor.
Bob France, thank you for that compliment. It's always an honor to talk with you. I'm humbled to share with the Dennis Prager audience today. Thank you for choosing me.
Well, I wanted to bring your message, Jack, as I said to you privately, to a national audience. My goal is to get you on Fox News or somewhere else because and this isn't, for a personal reason. It's because I care about my state. I care about my family. I care about the economy. I care about workers. And we are being misled by the state of Ohio, by Governor Mike DeWine. Again, this isn't a partisan thing because he's a Republican. I don't live in New York or Virginia where there's a Democrat governor that I'm complaining about, and neither do you. This is a Republican governor. But his response to the coronavirus from day one has been overreactionary, and it has been retaliatory in many ways. And his action now is almost indefensible. So I want to start with what you and I talked about yesterday and what you posted about yesterday as Governor DeWine announced his color code system for all Ohio counties. And when you get to a certain level on that system, you are in a mandatory mask mandate scenario, and you are on the cusp of going into flat-out lockdown, where no one leaves their house except for emergency supplies and services. That's what we're getting. And Jack Windsor, you know the truth. You told us the truth in Ohio. Now tell the nation exactly how dishonest that is.
Well, I'm going to start with cases, hospitalizations, and deaths because those are the things driving that dashboard. And interestingly enough, cases are the thing that they're really relying on. So you would think, and by the way, these are the things that are going to affect whether our kids can play sports, whether they're in a classroom this fall, how many people can be inside a restaurant, whether I can get into a nursing home to see my mom. You would think the definition of these things would be clear and consistent, and that the numbers they represent are indicative of what's going on in our communities. And unfortunately, Bob, they're not. What's interesting about the case number, for example, is it's extremely liberal, and counties are being docked for this. Let me give you two examples of how broad the definition is, how it's affected the case count in Ohio. First, we heard that there was an outbreak in an Amish community. We talked about this. One person tested positive. The attempt to trace that person and test more in the ordinance was denied. The health department decided, according to CDC guidelines, to count as positive all the members of the entire family. The same thing happened in a separate county. I retrieved an email from a county health commissioner that shows one person was found to be COVID positive. A local official asked the commissioner why the remaining family members were counted positive and not tested. The response was, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's not a squirrel. So they counted the whole family positive. That's according to CDC guidelines. So they're not necessarily playing fast and loose. They're just following the standard. Now, you mentioned in Ohio we have this color-coded system. No county is below yellow. Yellow's like the thing. When you go to the CDC site, the United States is green. The United States is green because for 10 straight weeks, the CDC found that there is a decline in deaths. In fact, we are almost at the point where we're going to drop below that epidemic threshold. Now, the interesting part about all 7 of those counties, are you ready for this?
Yes, sir.
ICU bed usage in all 7 of those counties is less than 10%. When I ran the numbers yesterday, you and I talked about this. All 7 of those counties had 27 hospitalizations and 5 deaths. Now, we can talk about, if this is a good time, why that hospitalization tag is really wonky, and then we'll talk about why the death number may even be misleading. But keep in mind, these are 7 counties that are coded red. So we start at yellow, it escalates to orange, then to red. And in Ohio, if you get the purple, that means that you can only go out to get supplies and medicine. So 7 counties are on the threshold of being counted in that purple category and essentially being locked down. Here's the other scary part. Information is shared so inconsistently that there was a headline in a local paper today that said the death count in Franklin County, which is where Columbus is located, the capital county, if you will. The death count had gone up 23%. Well, we went into the CSV file, which is the raw data file, and what we found is that for 2 reporting periods ago, there were 50 deaths, and for the last reporting period, there were 44. So not only was there not an increase of 23%, there was a decrease in deaths, but it's not how the numbers are being packaged and reported daily through the governor's social media feed and at the 2 p.m. press conference.
See, that's the dishonesty that I was talking about, and that's what I need people to understand. Because if it's happening in our state and with our governor, Governor Mike DeWine, it is very likely happening the way they package the numbers, as you say, in other states as well. And that's why I wanted to bring you on. We only have a minute left in this segment, Jack, but you mentioned the contact trace positive. In other words, if somebody tests positive, they're going to mark the entire family positive because they live in the same household. You said that CDC protocol. Okay, the other way that they maneuver these numbers, which you have talked about, is by counting a patient who tests positive multiple times as multiple cases. And they want people to believe that a case equals a new patient, correct?
They do, and so I put out a post 2 days ago, and it went viral. I got a call from the press secretary yesterday. He was not happy. I'm happy because what we found is that certain health departments thought we're getting multiple positive tests, and that equals positive cases. The press secretary said, no, multiple tests are deduplicated, and it only counts as one case. Somebody in the governor's administration said, no, multiple tests are equaling multiple cases. My whole point was the job of the media is to shine the light on inconsistencies and give people accurate information, particularly in a time of crisis. The commitment that I got from the governor yesterday is they're going to change it.
Jack, nobody else is doing that in the media. That's why I brought you on to talk to the nation on the Dennis Prager program, because I didn't bring anybody else on because nobody else is doing this. There's a lot more to uncover here. Jack will stay with us for one more segment. This is Bob France sitting in for Dennis Prager.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
In your opinion, did the demonstrations that were not only inevitable but probably necessary following the murder of George Floyd, did they contribute to the resurgence of the pandemic in a significant way?
I think as just a matter of intuition and common sense, I think you have to say yes. You look at the explosion in young cases. I know that there are some counterexamples. In Minnesota, it wasn't from protests, it was from bars being open. But as a general sense, I think absolutely. I think the larger damage from those protests in terms of the COVID part is the absolute discrediting of the epidemiological establishment to be taken seriously. Because the second you say these rules are really important, will save lives, so you shouldn't do the things that you really care about, but the things that we really care about, it's a free-for-all. And so there's now just a large constituency on the left and right that will not listen to these people. They sold their credibility for a little sort of woke profile. in response to a truly horrific thing, and you can't get that toothpaste back into the tube. If you said, going to church or your parents' funeral, that is a selfish thing that is going to get people killed. But going out for day 11 of protests, that is an honorable and glorious thing and should be allowed to do it. You can't have those kinds of double standards and expect to have credibility going forward.
Read the Washington Post editorial this morning on this, because I am completely convinced the pandemic is back because of these demonstrations, at least half of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Changing Columbus Day to Juneteenth is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And where does it stop? I mean, they're tearing down statues, changing names of schools and military bases. Where does it stop?
It's a reasonable question. You're allowed to ask it, I think. At least you used to be. This used to be America, where we could have conversations, we could have exchanges, we could have disagreement and not expect to be dragged by the mob, attacked. Saw some video last night. Some woman had some dispute with neighbors over a stone patio being built in their yard. They recorded her. She happened to be white. They happened to be black. It got turned into a racial thing. And before you know it, she had hundreds of protesters in front of her door protesting her racism, because it seemed to me like she's a nosy neighbor that didn't think the other neighbors were allowed to build a stone patio where they built them. But immediately she was declared a racist. Over at PragerU, my friend Dennis Prager has a pretty remarkable site, PragerU. The New York Times, evidently, is now setting its sights on Mount Rushmore. We knew this was coming. I'm not kidding you. If I announced to you, breaking news, a discussion underway to tear down the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., you wouldn't be surprised, right? You wouldn't be surprised. Again, here was the exchange I had with a dear friend who doesn't agree with me on a lot of stuff or political stuff. What's Christopher Columbus got to do with George Floyd's death? Don't you know what a bad guy he was?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart
27 minutes before the top of the hour. Thanks so much for joining us. Bob France sitting in for Dennis Prager, and we will open up the phone lines shortly at 8Prager776. That's 877-243-7776. But I've got one more segment with an intrepid television news reporter from Mansfield, Ohio, my home state. And he's daily on the rear end of the governor of the state of Ohio in Columbus, our capital, over the COVID-19 reporting numbers, cases, hospitalizations, ICU admissions, and deaths. He's on his tail because, quite frankly, nobody else is. And Jack Windsor is his name. Jack, we've got one more segment, and I want to talk a little bit more. You mentioned hospitalizations being reported by the DeWine administration and the Ohio Department of Health as being on the rise. But I don't know that that's necessarily accurate when you look at what they are deciding is a COVID hospitalization. Can you take us through that, please?
Absolutely. Hospitalizations, they're super important. If increases in positive cases are severe and the patients have a high viral load, that's going to show up in a proportionate increase in hospitalizations. In Ohio, that's simply not happening. There have been minor, and I mean real minor upticks, and in some parts of the country as well, I would assume. But overall, hospitalizations are trending down. Now, the troubling part with hospitalizations is what you alluded to, and what likely drove the little uptick is this. We've received reports from families who have loved ones that entered a hospital for things such as delivering a baby or wound care, but while there, the patient performs a mandated test with no symptoms, and unbeknownst to the patient, the test returns positive. And now that becomes a COVID hospitalization. Now, the hospital will get $11,000 in that instance, so it behooves them. Plus, we don't know how many people go to the ER or hospital because they can't afford insurance. So at best, that number is ambiguous. And, the other challenge with hospitalizations is this. For months, people deferred care, whether out of fear or government orders. Consequently, things lifted. We've seen hospitals begin to fill up again, which is what they're supposed to do. We've seen several false headlines where outlets claim that hospitalizations are up due to the virus. But in fact, the hospitals are getting back to normal capacity, and coronavirus is a small part of the overall occupancy. We need to lean into that. Are ICU beds COVID beds? Are hospitalizations really COVID hospitalizations, or is it a secondary mandatory test because somebody's there delivering a baby?
So having said all of that, despite all of that somewhat ambiguous information and reporting, hospitalizations in Ohio, they're still down. And that's not what they're focusing on. What we hear every day from the governor is that the cases are spiking. Cases, positive test after positive test. But they're not talking about if it's putting people in the hospital for real, and the fact that the number of hospitalizations in this state are down. And then now take us, Jack, to the death rate, because that's been the most important thing. This is a deadly disease. If you don't wear a mask, you could be killing someone, we are told. That's not what the death numbers tell me.
No, Ohio and many other states do not break from CDC protocol in dealing with deaths. Right now, there's no distinction between dying from COVID and dying with COVID. I have two powerful situations in my mind. The first is a younger person who was in an auto accident and died from sustained injuries. The family was shocked to learn when they received the death certificate that it was coded as COVID. Now, there's another example of a person who was already in hospice care, terminally ill. Again, the family gets the death certificate. They're outraged because the death is being ruled coronavirus. I had a chance to interview Erin Marie Olszewski last week, and her account of what went on in New York with respect to cases, counts, hospitalizations, and death, it's shocking. Google Epicenter Nurse, watch her documentary. It's eye-opening. I can't say that's what's going on in Ohio, but there are such liberal definitions and interpretations. The numbers that we are getting are not always true. And by the way, in Ohio, what you'll hear is reported in the last 24 hours. That information can go all the way back to November of 2019, which is when we have our first case now documented. Number of hospitalizations in the last 24 hours in Ohio was actually 26. It'll be interesting to see what the governor says that number is today.
That is remarkable. I mean, I just thinking about what you said before, and I want to circle back now because we've got less than a minute, Jack, but to the 7 counties that are on the cusp of being shut down to the point where you can only leave for survival necessities and services. 27, you gave me that number again, 27 hospitalizations in 7 counties. That covers, I don't know how many hospitals and only 2 deaths, and yet they are on the verge of doing this. Last question for you is, do you think that what we're seeing in Ohio, and this is all speculative, I understand, because you're not covering other states, but do you think what's happening in Ohio is unique, or is it likely being done this way around the country?
I think it's being done this way around the country. I had a chance to dive into some numbers in Texas and Florida and in Arizona, and some of the upticks were really on the southern border where there was some, where they're trading a humanitarian effort for, cases going down and the disease being flat. But overall, no, this is going on in America, and people are not reporting the numbers accurately.
Nobody's reporting it, Jack. That's why I'm bringing you to the nation here, and I hope I can get the rest of the nation's attention because it's going on in Ohio, and it's probably going on there. Jack Windsor, WMFD TV in Mansfield, Ohio. Thank you, Jack. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Bob.
Cool.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
What Frederick Douglass have to do with George Floyd's death in Minneapolis? Frederick Douglass was a former slave. He was a 19th century abolitionist. He was, by all accounts, a magnificent human being, brave, bold. He gave a speech that was so important called "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." That may be his best known speech. He gave it in 1852. It was an Independence Day address to the Rochester Anti-Slavery Sewing Society. And a lot of people have cited his speech. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Independence doesn't mean anything if you're a slave. Independence doesn't matter if you are owned by a human being. And so Frederick Douglass is one of the giants of our history. You know what the peaceful protesters did in Rochester, New York? They tore the statue down over the weekend. That's how they celebrated the 4th of July. They ripped it from its base. According to pictures, the statue's base completely gone. And according to the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, this statue was damaged beyond repair. More peaceful protest, huh?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
No one suffered as much as Lincoln because of the war. His son died. He oversaw that. I mean, taking down Lincoln Memorial, Jim Talent, is just crazy.
It's scandalous. I can't criticize it enough. I think he was the greatest statesman in American history. His second inaugural address is one of the deepest reflections on both the spiritual level and the reflections of a statesman on the war. He reshaped the American Republic. He saved it, and he deserves all honor. And the people criticizing him don't know anything about him and couldn't hold a candle to him.
Lincoln did not set out to be an abolitionist, right? He did not set out.
He hated slavery. He used to say, if anything is wrong, slavery is wrong. And he wanted to get rid of it, but he knew that in order to get rid of it, he had to save the Union. So his first goal was to save the Union. He moved as quickly as he could against slavery, all things considered, and he was effective. He was able to do what the framers, who also wanted to get rid of it, could not do. And he deserves, and had anybody else been president, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah,
I think God raised him up. You and I have a similar worldview about, and I think had he lived, we would not be going through what we're going through today. I think he had that kind of wisdom.
Great.
Did you know that you can see visual highlights of my show every day on my YouTube channel? So sign up today, go to youtube.com, type in Dennis Prager Channel, and click subscribe. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you'll be notified every time we put up a new clip.
16 minutes before the top of the hour number 1 of the Dennis Prager Show. My name is Bob France. So, privileged to be sitting here. One might say I have privilege, and I can actually accept that distinction for a change. I am privileged to be sitting in the studio for Dennis today. Phone lines are now open at 8Prager776. That's 877-243-7776. Jack Windsor, my guest just moments ago, sent me a text thanking me for choosing him to come onto the program. And my response to him is something I want to share with you, and that is there is no choice. And that's no disrespect, but there is no choice because nobody else is practicing real journalism except for him, at least in this state. And I read, by way of, online, the biggest newspapers from the biggest cities all across the state of Ohio, and I watch the daily press briefings as much as I can, and no other reporters are asking these kinds of questions. Now, before you get turned off and say, why is he focusing only on Ohio? Well, I'm in Ohio. And yes, I know I'm talking to the nation. But as I said to Jack, the reason it was important to get this out here is you don't think there's only one governor and one state health department that is misleading the people with all of these, fear-mongering statistics of spikes and surges in the number of cases, do you? You don't think that other governors are telling the truth about what a case is versus what a patient is, about the number of positive tests compared to the number of new tests being performed? You don't think this is the only one, do you? You think it's the only one that's lying about the number of hospitalizations, claiming they're on the rise, and we might have to take steps to flatten that curve again? When the statistics are available to anybody willing to dig, the way Jack does. Find out hospitalizations are not on the rise. Not only are they not, as you heard him say, in Franklin County, Ohio, not only are there not 23% increase, there was actually a decrease. So if they're willing to lie to you in one state, they're willing to lie to you in all states. Here's an example of what I was talking about. I played for you a clip in the first hour, or first half hour, of State Representative Nino Vitale here in the state of Ohio, who pointed out the amount of testing. He's telling people, don't get tested. He's telling people flat out, don't get tested if you are healthy. Don't just say, hey, they opened up a pop-up COVID test center near me. I'm going to go make sure I don't have it. Stop it. Because if you're not sick, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, is his point. And he said, here's what's happening. On July 2nd, so that's 7 days ago, Ohio reported a whopping 1,265 new cases, they said. But what they didn't tell you was that on July 2nd, 2020, Ohio also performed a record 20,613 tests. The highest of total to date. So you wonder, well, you got more positives because you got more tests, but that doesn't mean there were more sick people. There aren't 1,265 sick people in hospitals because of that. They're asymptomatic. And according, again, we get to the misleading and ambiguous information from the WHO and from the CDC about whether or not asymptomatic spread is rare or common. So they're just manipulating data constantly. And here's something else real quick. When Jack gets in front of the governor in about an hour and 15 minutes, the next press briefing will happen from my home state. It's probably happening all over. But when he gets the governor, he's going to ask them not only about Ohio, but about the CDC. According to the CDC, which combined their influenza and pneumonia reporting, which are not COVID, but are similar because they're respiratory, combined their influenza and pneumonia reporting with COVID into a new class called PIC, P-I-C, pneumonia, influenza, and COVID. It shows an entire U.S. map in the green. But in the Ohio color coding system put together by Mike DeWine, there isn't even a green there. And the CDC has reported their 10th straight week of declining deaths. This in the face of and within the lag time of increased testing, the way that Nino Vitale is talking about. More testing, more positive cases, and continuing declining deaths. As a matter of fact, the COVID deaths may go so low compared to all deaths in the country that the COVID-19 is going to lose its epidemic status. It will not be classified as an epidemic any longer. Is the CDC telling you that? No, you got to look for it. You got to dig for it. It is impossible to believe that they are looking out for our best interest with all of this manipulated, if not outright fabricated data that they're presenting us. They're not trying to look at your health. They're trying to keep you afraid. Here's the best example of that I can offer you. Who is America's doctor, right? Dr. Anthony Fauci, the leading epidemiologist in America. He has worked under 5 presidents and all of this and all of that. He's the authority. He's the be-all, end-all. I would like you to listen to the authority, the be-all, end-all. Dr. Anthony Fauci talking about what should be the most important aspect of all of this regarding the Chinese coronavirus. Is it killing people? This is his response.
I want to emphasize just because it's such important what the senator just said, that it's a false narrative to take comfort in a lower rate of death.
Wait, what? What did you just say, Dr. Fauci?
So many other things that are very dangerous and bad about this virus. Don't get yourself into false complacency.
He said it twice. It's a false comfort to look at the lower rate of death. I'm sorry. I would tend to think that almost the whole of America would be jumping up and down for joy at the news that this highly infectious virus is very, very, very non-lethal. that it has a very, very low mortality rate. And those that do succumb to the virus are people in very highly dangerous situations, such as congregant life settings, elderly with underlying comorbidities or underlying health conditions. That's to the vast majority of America. And that means young and middle-aged, healthy America, and yes, seniors who don't have those comorbidities, that it's very, very, very non-lethal. And he says, don't take false comfort in that.
To take comfort in a lower rate of death.
I mean, honestly, focus on the cases. Keep being scared. Don't be happy about the death rate. We'll be right back.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Larry Elder, Rick in Metairie, Louisiana, a suburb of New Orleans. I just saw the video of your movie, brand new movie, Uncle Tom. I just wanted to tell you I'm as excited and as happy as I could be for you as a person, but thank you for what you do and keep doing it.
Larry, Uncle Tom was amazing, simply brilliant, so fantastic in every way, shape, and form. Honestly, my favorite part was Herman Cain and Carol Swain, but Herman Cain, so funny, so beautiful, made me laugh, made me cry. Great movie, great work, Larry. You're doing amazing things. Keep it up.
Larry, I just got done watching Uncle Tom, and I am so angry and sad that the Democratic tool of systemic racism has been so successful in putting up a wall between myself and my African American brothers and sisters in this country. We are all children of the same God. We are all brothers and sisters. Thank you for the work. It was amazing.
If only Trump could do an executive order to make Uncle Tom required viewing in every grade school or high school, especially in inner cities.
All TV,
it would be
as
amazing.
well as our website.
It was
If you want
beyond
to watch
great.
the show,
It
not just
recon-
listen, go to townhall.com and click on the Townhall TV button.
Five minutes before the top of the hour. Thanks for being with us on the Dennis Prager Show. My name is Bob France. I am live in Cleveland, Ohio in the ReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420 The Answer. Let's stay in the state of Ohio for Mark, who is calling us from Marysville. Mark, it's the Dennis Prager Show. Bob France sitting in. Good afternoon. Go right ahead.
Good to hear from you. There's 3 state TV stations in Columbus, Ohio, the state capital, that will list in a crawl on the bottom of the screen 5 of the 6 surrounding counties of Franklin County. It'll list anywhere from 9 to 43 deaths or 200 to 2,200 cases, but they never list Union County, where I'm from, and it's a surrounding county. We only have 89 cases and 1 death. We have the Honda plants, which employ 10 to 12,000 people. There's 2 or 3 plants. We have got a lot of herd immunity that's been built up. They leave us off. They don't talk about us. They don't post it. I found it out on that 800 number that the state has set up. So that's another thing. I know this Jack Windsor is overloaded, but he could look into that, because it doesn't make any sense. They are hiding some of the real facts. They're not even twisting these facts. They're just hiding them, and they're not
What's
even
the newspaper of record in that county, Mark?
What's that?
What's the newspaper of record there? Is there a big newspaper in Union County?
Not really. We've got the Marysville Journal-Tribune, but it is got a very bad reputation.
I'm just wondering if, because you brought up the TV stations in the Columbus area, and I'm wondering if the newspapers are even doing that. Because you mentioned Jack Windsor's got his hands full, and you're right, he does. He's researching so many different things. Where are the other reporters? Where is a reporter living in your county saying, we're doing remarkably well here. Maybe I'll go to the press conference and ask the governor, why are you neglecting the counties that are not in trouble, or the ones that are not part of the narrative of you trying to scare the bejesus out of people?
They've never said anything like that in any of their issues, and a lot of us, honestly, I wish somebody would start a meme in this state. It'll just say, who is blackmailing Governor DeWine? Because there's a lot of people think he's being blackmailed, or maybe he's just a deep plant. He's been laying low for 30 or 40 years. The Democrats knew they could control him because the Democrats love him. They love him in this state, and he's a Republican.
I'm not going to speculate on any of that stuff. Mark, thank you for the phone call. I'm not going to speculate on any of that deep state plant, this or that or the other thing. I don't know what to make of him. I'll be honest with you. I voted for him because the alternative was Richard Cordray, which was never going to happen. But my support in the primary, the Republican primary, and I'm not saying she would have been the greatest thing in the history of the world, but I voted for or supported in the primary Mary Taylor, who, of course, was Kasich's lieutenant governor. So, I mean, what is it? What is it with the Republicans at some of the highest levels of the state of Ohio? I don't know. I'm not going to call him a plant. I'm not going to call him a deep state. And I'm not going to say somebody's blackmailing him. But I am very, very disappointed with what I've seen from Mike DeWine. Hour number 1 in the books on the Dennis Prager Show. We'll take your phone calls for the rest of the way on the Salem Radio Network.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio. Trending now on the Eric METAXAS Show.
Let's talk for a second about Joe Biden. He has been forced to take on the rhetoric of AOC and the crazies. And it's a very bizarre thing to see a man who has been in power since 1969. That's not a typo, folks.
He's the change candidate, Eric.
Yeah, he's the candidate for change. That's right. And so if you, but I mean, can you imagine that he has been in power? He has wielded tremendous power as vice president and as senator for literally decades. But he is now mouthing things that are the antithesis of what he has stood for.
Well, look, I mean, for those of us that love American cinema and literature, he is the ultimate Manchurian candidate, like literally. I mean, and I mean, he's a shell of an individual. I mean, everything he espouses is provided to him by radical leftists that look at this as an opportunity to storm the Bastille. Biden is the most corrupt vice president in American history. He can't distinguish his wife from his sister, doesn't know what state he's in, doesn't know what president he served with, doesn't even know what country he sold us out to so his son could get rich. He's the perfect candidate for ideologues to take over our country.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
What Frederick Douglass have to do with George Floyd's death in Minneapolis? Frederick Douglass was a former slave. He was a 19th century abolitionist. He was, by all accounts, a magnificent human being, brave, bold, He gave a speech that was so important called What to the Slave is the 4th of July. That may be his best-known speech. He gave it in 1852. It was an Independence Day address to the Rochester Anti-Slavery Sewing Society. And a lot of people have cited his speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. Independence doesn't mean anything if you're a slave. Independence doesn't matter if you are owned by a human being. And so Frederick Douglass is one of the giants of our history. You know what the peaceful protesters did in Rochester, New York? They tore the statue down over the weekend. That's how they celebrated the 4th of July. They ripped it from its base. According to pictures, the statue's base completely gone. And according to the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, this statue was damaged beyond repair. More peaceful protest, huh?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
No one suffered as much as Lincoln because of the war. His son died. He oversaw that. I mean, taking down Lincoln Memorial, Jim Talent, is just crazy.
It's scandalous. I can't criticize it enough. I think he was the greatest statesman in American history. His second inaugural address is one of the deepest reflections on both the spiritual level and the reflections of a statesman on the war. He reshaped the American Republic. He saved it, and he deserves all honor. And the people criticizing him don't know anything about him and couldn't hold a candle to him.
Lincoln did not set out to be an abolitionist, right? He did not set out.
He hated slavery. He used to say, if anything is wrong, slavery is wrong. And he wanted to get rid of it, but he knew that in order to get rid of it, he had to save the Union. So his first goal was to save the Union. He moved as quickly as he could against slavery, all things considered, and he was effective. He was able to do what the framers, who also wanted to get rid of it, could not do. And he deserves, and had anybody else been president, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think God raised him up. You and I have a similar worldview about, and I think had he lived, we would not be going through what we're going through today. I think he had that kind of wisdom.
Great.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Larry Elder, Rick in Metairie, Louisiana.
Hour number 2 of the Dennis Prager Show now underway. Thanks so much for being with us. 6 minutes past the top of the hour. My name is Bob France, sitting in for Dennis here on the Salem Radio Network. My thanks again to our guest, Jack Windsor, WMFD TV down in Mansfield, Ohio. Not too far from where I sit in my home studio, the PainFreeReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420 The Answer. That's my base in Cleveland. I'm on the air daily from 9 to 11 a.m. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at France Radio, FRANTZ Radio. And if you're interested, you can listen to me anywhere at WHKRadio.com, 9 to 11, each and every Monday through Friday. And very honored to be sitting in for Dennis. We're talking a lot about COVID-19. We're talking a lot about how the government, we focused on this state of Ohio in the first segment, or the first hour, rather. We can focus on your state if you wish. But how governments and certain government executives are, for whatever reason, pandering fear. They're pushing fear. They are selling it, and they are unfortunately finding plenty of buyers when it comes to the actual threat of the COVID-19 pandemic. One would think that the most important thing we need to figure out is this pandemic killing people? And come to find out, with testing ramped up to astronomical levels, they're finding a whole lot of positive cases, by the way, not all of which are new patients. Retests of sick people in quarantine can result in 2, 3, 4, depending on how many tests they take before they test negative twice in a row to get out of quarantine, can lead to that many new quote-unquote cases, right? But they're selling the number of sick people or the number of positive cases even if there is no sickness, no symptoms, no cough, no fever, no shortness of breath, no sneezing. None of those things that we know are associated with this respiratory illness. So they're focusing on cases and not on the outcome of those cases. The outcome of those cases is that 99+% of those who come down with this virus survive. The death rate is extraordinarily low. It was already far lower than they said it was going to be way back in February and March. And now it continues to drop because the number of positive cases continues to climb. The cases climb, the deaths stay low, the mortality rate goes lower. And so what do they have to do now? They have to tell you, stop looking at the death rate. The death rate doesn't matter.
I want to emphasize, just because it's such important what the senator just said, that it's a false narrative to take comfort in a lower rate of death. There's so many other things that are very dangerous and bad about this virus. Don't get yourself into false complacency.
I'm still just blown away that Dr. Anthony Fauci is the lead figure on the White House coronavirus task force. I'm blown away that this man, who has flipped and flopped on everything from mask usage to a mortality rate to opening and closing schools to opening and closing businesses, he has flipped and flopped every which way, like a fish out of water. And now here he is saying, don't you worry about the fact that nobody's dying. There's still plenty to be afraid of. He's selling fear. And what I don't understand is, for whom is he working? On whose behalf is he selling that fear? He's working for the Vice President of the United States. It's Mike Pence's task force. And Mike Pence's task force isn't going to do anything that the President of the United States doesn't want him to do. Why is Anthony Fauci still on that task force? Why is he still there telling people, don't worry about the death rate? Don't you think that America should be cheering the low death rate? Especially when the number of deaths we do have, again, are in very specific types of settings, among very specific types of vulnerable people, and that the vast majority of America, including all of her school children, are going to, if they do contract this disease, be sick for a few days like they got the flu and then be done? I think you'd think we should celebrate that. And he said, nope, don't be lulled into a false sense of comfort or security or whatever it was.
That it's a false narrative to take comfort in a lower rate of death.
They're selling fear. And like I said, plenty of people are buying. Let's go to the phones. 8 Prager 776. That's 877-243-7776. We're going to talk to Joseph, who's calling us from Fontana, California, on the Dennis Prager Show. Hey, it's Bob sitting in for Dennis. Joseph, thanks for joining us. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Bob, for taking my call.
My pleasure.
First of all, I want to thank you and all of the people who work in your radio network for doing your contributions to reveal the truth about all the important issues. What I'm calling about is that there's been a lot of attention to the amount of deaths lost to COVID-19 and also to a lot of attention to Black Lives Matter. And I'd like to remind people that there's been 62 million lives lost to abortion. And I think we should address that issue as being very, very important too.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, it will forever puzzle me, if not outright enrage me, that in many states, including my state, that during the shutdowns of all businesses except for those deemed to be essential, abortion clinics were among those allowed to remain open as essential. Gyms were closed. Gyms where people can go and run and lift and work and keep their bodies healthy were closed. Abortion clinics were open. You also brought that up in the context of Black Lives Matter, something I will be getting into later in this hour. You're 100% correct. And it's nice to see some people, prominent people in the black community, pointing that out. That if Black Lives Matter, how can they/we possibly accept the ongoing butchering of black babies, particularly of black babies, because so many Planned Parenthood clinics were indeed built in urban settings, in very low income settings, high poverty settings, which are oftentimes populated by African Americans. They built Planned Parenthood clinics within walking distance so they wouldn't have to get rides. And some are calling them out for this. Not a lot, but some are calling them out. And I will share a little bit later on in this hour someone who did, who pointed out that Margaret Sanger's goal of weeding out the undesirables, she literally used the word weeds, by the way, talking about getting rid of the things that you don't want in your garden of diversity. The weeds are the undesirables, including blacks. That Margaret Sanger, the patron saint of Planned Parenthood and thus black homicide, did exactly that. So I'm with you. I appreciate that, and you're right. We do have to keep that. How is that an essential service in a civil society? I'll never understand. Let's go to Twinsburg, Ohio, and that's where we find Andrew on the Dennis Prager Show. Hey, Andrew, it's Bob sitting in for Dennis. Go right ahead.
Hey, Bob. Great to see you guest hosting for Dennis Prager. I'm reading these liberal publication headlines that talk about the impact of COVID-19 on gender pay equality in the workplace. The aggravating Democrats who keep bringing up this debunked gender wage gap nonsense because the election is coming up. It's pretty simple. 8 out of the 10 highest-paying college majors, men represent more than 80% of all college graduates in these fields, which include electrical engineering, management information systems, computer science, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, information technology. And it's just a shame for these Democrats. They're not doing the research, and the media is safeguarding this hoax of the gender wage gap and using COVID-19 with it. It's crazy to me.
Well, that's a great. You're right. You mentioned it right at the top there. It's an election season. We're 4 months away from the election, obviously, and now it is suddenly a concern. Nobody cares, by the way. Nobody even talks about that for the most part. Unless it's some women's a month of this or that or the other, or some sort of a made up holiday over it, and we have to talk about the gender wage gap. Nobody talks about it for the rest of the better part of 4 year cycles. They do it during this time. And you're right, it is a myth. And as far as COVID and its impact on it, look, I truly think that when they say that the disease, the virus, doesn't discriminate, I think they're right. I think it's true. If people are knocked out of the workforce, they're knocked out of the workforce because of what is deemed to be essential and what is not, whether they're male or female, or whether or not they lose their jobs or not, and whether or not they're able to advance or not. I don't think it matters, but I do think that the gender wage gap being garbage, they're using anything they can to bring it up again in an election cycle. And especially when Joe Biden picks a female running mate of color, no doubt, doggone well they're going to make more hay with that again, even though it has been proven. There's a great PragerU video about the gender wage gap. You should watch that. I'm Bob Franson for Dennis Appear.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio.
This is Owen Strand for Townhall.com. It was heartwarming to see many of the planet's toughest and best athletes telling their children on social media how much they love them. In short videos, fathers played games with their kids, bear hugged them, and told them jokes, all in a tribute to dads on Father's Day. In a society that does little to encourage fathers, the NBA's efforts did not go unnoticed. Families are the essential building block of society, and fathers are the essential building block of the family. A home led by a father, especially a father with a spiritual focus and strong character, places flourishing within reach. Gender-neutral children do not need gender-neutral parents. Boys and girls need fathers and mothers bound by lifelong commitment. This isn't a prejudicial belief. Downplaying fatherhood sets us all up for disaster. Social media support is great, but we need more. We need a society that celebrates, honors, and ennobles fathers. I'm Owen Strand.
Alliance Defending Freedom, fighting for those whose liberty is being violated. Trending now on the Eric METAXAS Show.
Let's talk for a second about Joe Biden. He has been forced to take on the rhetoric of AOC and the crazies. And it's a very bizarre thing to see a man who has been in power since 1969. That's not a typo, folks.
He's the change candidate, Eric.
Yeah, he's the candidate for change. That's right. And so if you... But I mean, can you imagine that he has been in power? He has wielded tremendous power as vice president and as senator for literally decades. But he is now mouthing things that are the antithesis of what he has stood for.
Well, look, I mean, for those of us that love American cinema and literature, he is the ultimate Manchurian candidate, like literally. I mean, and I mean, he's a shell of an individual. I mean, everything he espouses is provided to him by radical leftists that look at this as an opportunity to storm the Bastille. Biden is the most corrupt vice president in American history. He can't distinguish his wife from his sister, doesn't know what state he's in, doesn't know what president he served with, doesn't even know what country he sold us out to so his son could get rich. He's the perfect candidate for ideologues to take over our country.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
What Frederick Douglass have to do with George Floyd's death in Minneapolis? Frederick Douglass was a former slave. He was a 19th century abolitionist. He was, by all accounts, a magnificent human being, brave, bold. He gave a speech that was so important called "What to the Slave is the 4th of July?" That may be his best known speech. He gave it in 1852. It was an Independence Day address to the Rochester Anti-Slavery Sewing Society. And a lot of people have cited his speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July?" Independence doesn't mean anything if you're a slave. Independence doesn't matter if you are owned by a human being. And so Frederick Douglass is one of the giants of our history. You know what the peaceful protesters did in Rochester, New York? They tore the statue down over the weekend. That's how they celebrated the 4th of July. They ripped it from its base. According to pictures,
20 minutes after the top of the hour. Thanks for being with us on the Dennis Prager Show. My name is Bob France, sitting in for Dennis in the painfreerelieffactor.com studios here in Cleveland, Ohio. We'll come back to the phones in a moment, but previous caller got my attention, and I'm going to launch into this a little earlier than I would have otherwise. He brought up Black Lives Matter. He brought up abortion. He brought up the astounding rate of abortion among black women and black pregnancies, and let's take this on. First of all, I mentioned a prominent African American celebrity / public figure told the truth about Margaret Sanger and the history of Planned Parenthood and why it was designed, why it was implemented. And that individual happens to be running for president of the United States. Of course, I speak of Kanye West, who has said he's taking off his red Trump hat and running for president of the United States himself. He did a wide-ranging interview with Forbes magazine, and in that, among the other subjects that were discussed was the issue, as all presidential candidates would, of course, be asked about, abortion. And what he said was very, very telling. Kanye West said Planned Parenthoods have been placed inside cities by white supremacists to do the devil's work. He said, I am pro-life because I'm following the word of the Bible. End quote. That's pretty strong stuff from Kanye West. As you can imagine, it's not going to sit well with a lot of people in the black community, especially those in the black community who work for Planned Parenthood, such as Nia Martin Robinson, who said in a statement to TMZ yesterday, the director of black leadership and engagement at Planned Parenthood's national headquarters, Nia Martin Robinson, said, black women are free to make our own decisions about our bodies and pregnancies and want and deserve to have access to the best medical care available. End quote. Now, that part of this is really not racial at all. The debate over whether or not Planned Parenthood provides medical care or health care, or whether it takes the life of innocent babies is one that's been going on forever, certainly since 1973, and will continue to. Her belief is that all women should be able to do whatever they want with their bodies. Of course, the problem is when you get into the bodies of other people who are defenseless, like the baby who is in jeopardy. Any insinuation, she said, that abortion is black genocide is offensive and infantilizing, she continued. I would probably correct that word. Maybe she just mispronounced it, but it's not infantilizing. It's infanticiding. That's what it is. She said the real threat to the black community's safety, health, and lives stems from lack of access to quality, affordable health care, the kind of health care apparently that kills our youngest citizens, the preborn, police violence, and the criminalization of reproductive health by anti-abortion opposition. Again, there it is, reproductive health care, they call it. Kanye West is right. It's not, of course, all about all black. It's not an all black and white issue, I mean to say. Of course, abortion is abortion, but it is. It is extraordinarily predominant in the African American community and those who believe that all lives matter, and especially black lives that cannot fend for themselves. This is a big deal. This is a big issue. So I'm going to use that to pivot here to Black Lives Matter. And I want to talk about the Breathe Act. The Breathe Act has been discussed and presented, but not introduced and sponsored in the United States Congress yet. But it is being presented and discussed by the likes of the Squids. Some people call them the Squad. Do not. Sharia Tlaib and Ayanna Pressley have spoken on this. Jihad Omar will sooner rather than later. And the Breathe Act that they would like to sponsor has been put together by the Black Lives Matter organization, led in part by co-founder Patrisse Cullors. And again, if I'm pronouncing her name incorrectly, well, I apologize, but not really because I don't care. It's Cullors. I don't know if it's Cullors or Colors or what it is, but she's the co-sponsor, or co-founder rather, of Black Lives Matter, and she is a Marxist. And that's not my accusation. That is her admission. That is her own self-description. She said that she is a trained Marxist. She and another one of the co-founders are trained Marxists. And their goals are far more political and societal and foundational than just racial and just about Black lives mattering. Their goals are to essentially destroy the nuclear family, to destroy the American economic and political systems, and to rebuild it in what can only be described as a socialist communist model. They're trained Marxists. They know exactly what they're doing. So Patrisse Cullors and, it will just say et al., have introduced the Breathe Act. The Associated Press reports on it this way. The bill is broken into 4 sections, the first of which specifically would divest federal resources from incarceration and policing. It's largely aimed at federal reforms because Congress can more easily regulate federal institutions and policy as opposed to state institutions or private prisons. So, in other words, divest federal resources from incarceration and policing means defund the police and get rid of prisons. The other sections lay out a detailed plan to achieve an equitable future, they say, calling for sweeping changes that would eliminate federal programs and agencies used to finance and expand the U.S. criminal legal system. The elimination would target agencies such as, drumroll please, ICE. Yes, you know, that evil Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, which has, according to the Associated Press, come under fire in recent years for its aggressive deportation efforts. ICE has come under fire in recent years for its aggressive deportation efforts. This is, again, part of the misleading mainstream media, trying to make you think that somehow under President Donald Trump, things have become, quote, more aggressive. They completely ignore the fact that Barack Obama deported more illegal aliens in his 8 years per year than President Trump has in his first 4. They also want you to think that the cages and all of that nonsense at the border in response to the caravans was Donald Trump driven and not leftover from cages built under former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder. They just want you to think that this is something they're stopping that Trump started. Back to the article, the act, which also seeks to reduce the Department of Defense budget, would institute changes to the policing, pretrial detention, sentencing, and prosecution practices that Cullors and Black Lives Matter have long disproportionately criminalized Black and brown communities, they say, as well as LGBTQ people, indigenous people, and individuals with disabilities. Now, I've done a little work on this, and I've looked at the U.S. Code of Laws, and I've looked at the Constitution, and I've yet to find any list of laws that apply to people who are gay, but not to people who are straight, laws that apply to people who are Black or brown or indigenous, rather than people who are immigrants, migrants, white, European-based. And I have yet to find any list of laws that apply to people with disabilities, but not to people who are perfectly healthy and able. So I'm looking, and I've got more on the Breathe Act, which I'll share with you after this, but believe me, this is something you're going to want to hear. Bob Brandt sitting in for Dennis Prager, right?
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Richard Nixon took on the media and had his vice president say a bunch of nasty things about the media. And the media disliked Richard Nixon intensely. But Richard Nixon was not able to convince large portions of the country of the fact, of the truth, and that is much of the media is relentlessly, intensely biased. By about a 5-1, 4-1 margin, reporters refer to themselves as Democrats or left-wing, admitted. You have the two arguably greatest, most important newspapers, and now websites, Washington Post, New York Times. And as I mentioned, Washington Post has never endorsed a Republican president, ever. Ever. New York Times, not since 1956. Not since 1956. Republicans have not advanced a single candidate that you felt was worthy of backing. Not Ronald Reagan. Not George Herbert Walker Bush. Former chair of the RNC, former envoy to China, former congressman from Texas, former vice president for 8 years. Second youngest naval aviator pilot in World War II. Former ambassador to the United Nations. And you couldn't support him over Michael Dukakis? Couldn't support him over Bill Clinton? This is what we're up against.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
The Democrats are trying to erase history. There's a good reason for
well,
that,
yeah,
right?
Look, the Democrats are the party of racism. The KKK was founded by the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party worked overtime to try to keep in place Jim Crow after they tried to keep in place slavery, after they tried to stop the progress of the civil rights movement, the actual civil rights movement from the 20th century. The Democrat Party history is littered with leaders. So I know we talked about this last time. The four speakers whose portraits that Nancy Pelosi was taking down, they were all Democrats.
All those Confederates.
Yeah,
all
so the
four
Democrat
speakers
Party,
were Democrats.
The Democrat Party has a history of racism, of bigotry, of creating the Ku Klux Klan. It was created by Democrats. Of pushing to try to keep in place Jim Crow before
and
that,
fighting the
against
Civil
slavery.
Rights Act
And
fighting it.
Right, the Democrat Party is littered with bad history. It's a Republican Party that was the champion of women's and civil rights, and it's important to note that. Look, Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president, right? Like Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves, the Emancipation Proclamation, held the Union together during the Civil War, was a Republican. He was the first Republican, and it's worth noting that the Democrats, I think that as they're doing all this chaos and trying to tear down statues in history and so on and so forth and rewrite history, they're trying to erase their own history.
Right.
And they don't want, I mean, God forbid the public found out that the Democrat Party caused the KKK.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Number 2, continuing on the Dennis Prager Show. Bob Brent sitting in, and we're talking about the Breathe Act, which is the legislative attempt for Black Lives Matter, a Marxist organization with the intention not of achieving racial equality or advocating for Black lives, but an organization hell-bent on destroying America's foundational principles, from its economic system to its political system, to its criminal justice system, to law and order, to the military, to our borders. I've already shared with you some of the goals of the Breathe Act laid out by the Black Lives Matter organizers that is being picked up and promoted now by Ayanna Pressley and Jihad Omar. No, I'm sorry, Sharia Tlaib, 2 of the members of the Squids, and it will be picked up by the others, I'm sure. But let me just finish this. This is the way the Associated Press reporting on it. This is how they say. It would establish a neighborhood demilitarization program which would collect and destroy all equipment, like military-grade armored vehicles and weapons in the hands of local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies by 2022. You get that? Your SWAT team doesn't get a bulletproof armored vehicle anymore. Your riot police, who have to stop the looting, the vandalism, the burning, the arson, the destruction, the assaults of crowds of thousands, they don't get protective equipment because it looks too militarized. And oh, by the way, even our federal law enforcement agencies, FBI, forget about it. You are at the mercy, essentially, of the criminals, whether they be foreign or domestic, on American soil. This is all in the Breathe Act. Federal law enforcement also would be unable to use facial recognition technology, which many communities across the nation have already banned, along with drones and other forms of electronic surveillance, such as ankle monitors. Ankle monitors you might think would be important because we're going to let everybody out of jail. There will be no jails, but we at least have to track criminals, right? Or maybe not. The bill would end life sentences and abolish all mandatory minimum sentencing laws and create a time-bound plan to close all federal prisons and immigration detention centers. So, criminal illegal aliens crossing our border, smuggling human beings for sex trafficking, smuggling drugs for cartels, MS-13 gang members macheteing people to death on this side of the border as a part of their standard operating procedures, none of them would be allowed to be held in an immigration detention center or a prison. Dylan Roof, the white supremacist who shot up a church, who shot up a black church, would not be getting the death penalty and would not be getting a life sentence in prison either. He would be let out if the Black Lives Matter Breathe Act becomes law. Did I mention demilitarization, not just of police, but of the military, eliminating or at least shrinking significantly the Department of Defense budget? The bill would direct Congress to establish community public safety offices that would conduct research on non-punitive public safety-focused interventions that could be funded through new grants and programs like Free Them All, which is a matching grant program offering a 50% federal match for projected savings when states and communities close their jails and their state or youth prisons. In other words, if a 16-year-old thug rapes a 16-year-old girl, this is just a hypothetical, the state, rather than locking him up in a juvenile detention facility, would get 50% of federal grant matching funds if they let him loose. Not with an ankle monitor, by the way. Those are gone too. According to the document, the Breathe Act, it would also bring about numerous changes to parents and children, such as removing police, school resource officers, and other armed security and metal detectors from schools, because that's the best way to avoid another school shooting. No police, no metal detectors at all in schools. And by the way, we don't want those police around our children in schools anyway. Why would we want them to have a friendly relationship with schools, or with children rather, when it would be better to make sure that a child's first encounter with a police officer is in an adversarial situation when they're being pulled over for a crime? This is the Breathe Act. No jail, no prisons, no police, no military, no borders, no ICE. And this is somehow no mandatory minimum sentences, no life sentences, and this somehow is going to lead to a healthier, safer nation. This is the Breathe Act proposed by Black Lives Matter. Respond to that next. Was that your payback?
This is Owen Strand for Townhall.com. It was heartwarming to see many of the planet's toughest and best athletes telling their children on social media how much they love them. In short videos, fathers played games with their kids, bear hugged them, and told them jokes, all in a tribute to dads on Father's Day. In a society that does little to encourage fathers, the NBA's efforts did not go unnoticed. Families are the essential building block of society, and fathers are the essential building block of the family. A home led by a father, especially a father with a spiritual focus and strong character, places flourishing within reach. Gender-neutral children do not need gender-neutral parents. Boys and girls need fathers and mothers bound by lifelong commitment. This isn't a prejudicial belief. Downplaying fatherhood sets us all up for disaster. Social media support is great, but we need more. We need a society that celebrates, honors, and ennobles fathers. I'm Owen Strand.
Alliance Defending Freedom, fighting for those whose liberty is being violated. Trending now on the Eric METAXAS Show.
Let's talk for a second about Joe Biden. He has been forced to take on the rhetoric of AOC and the crazies. And it's a very bizarre thing to see a man who has been in power since 1969. That's not a typo, folks.
He's the change candidate, Eric.
Yeah, he's the candidate for change. That's right. And so if you... But I mean, can you imagine that he has been in power? He has wielded tremendous power as vice president and as senator for literally decades. But he is now mouthing things that are the antithesis of what he has stood for.
Well, look, I mean, for those of us that love American cinema and literature, he is the ultimate Manchurian candidate, like literally. I mean, and I mean, he's a shell of an individual. I mean, everything he espouses is provided to him by radical leftists that look at this as an opportunity to storm the Bastille. Biden is the most corrupt vice president in American history. He can't distinguish his wife from his sister, doesn't know what state he's in, doesn't know what president he served with, doesn't even know what country he sold us out to so his son could get rich. He's the perfect candidate for ideologues to take over our country.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
What Frederick Douglass have to do with George Floyd's death in Minneapolis? Frederick Douglass was a former slave. He was a 19th century abolitionist. He was, by all accounts, a magnificent human being, brave, bold. He gave a speech that was so important called "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." That may be his best known speech. He gave it in 1852. It was an Independence Day address to the Rochester Anti-Slavery Sewing Society. And a lot of people have cited his speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." Independence doesn't mean anything if you're a slave. Independence doesn't matter if you are owned by a human being. And so Frederick Douglass is one of the giants of our history. You know what the peaceful
schools
protesters
giving
did
children
in
the
Rochester,
education
New
they
York?
need? If you think the answer is yes,
They
you
tore
haven't
the
asked a
statue
parent
down
with a
over the
child
weekend.
stuck
That's
in
how
a
they
bad
celebrated
school.
the 4th of
Cecilia
July. They ripped
Iglesias,
it from
president of the Parent Union, tells her personal story in this week's Prager University video. See it at prageru.com, where we teach what isn't taught.
"44 minutes past the hour, or if you are a forward thinker, 16 minutes before the top of the hour. Bob France with you live in for Dennis Prager from the ReliefFactor.com studios here in Cleveland, Ohio. My home base is AM 1420 The Answer. My social media, as much as I despise the platforms for their censorship of conservative thought, I do continue to fight the fight on them, with them. France Radio on Twitter, Facebook, and Parler, Parler, France Radio. It's all one word, Frantz, France Radio. Follow me in those places. If you think that some of the stuff I just described for you in the Breathe Act is a little over the top, if you think maybe I'm embellishing it, if you think that the Black Lives Matter organization really is just about black lives, it's not about trying to overthrow the United States government and to upend its foundational principles, well, let's just listen to a champion of the Black Lives Matter organization, a United States Congresswoman, Jihad Omar.
As long as our economy and political systems prioritize profit, without considering who is profiting, who is being shut out, we will perpetuate this inequality. So we cannot stop at criminal justice system. We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it.
The entire American economic and political systems must be dismantled along with the criminal justice system because they are all responsible for oppression of minorities. These are their words. These are not our words. These are not conservatives' words. These are not Americans' words. These are the words of people who wish to destroy America. And what kind of people are behind this movement? Well, again, I mentioned the name Patrisse Cullors, co-founder of Black Lives Matter. Well, this is how she describes herself and her organization.
I think that the criticism is helpful. I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories.
We are trained Marxists, super versed on ideological theories. Did you really think that Black Lives Matter was just about saving black lives? You did? That's so cute. Black Lives Matter has never been about saving black lives. It's not about achieving black equality. It is about exactly what the Breathe Act detailed. It's exactly what Patrisse Cullors, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, detailed. It is Marxist in theory, and its goal is to remove the capitalist system that they believe to be oppressive and replace it with a socialist/communist nation founded on those principles of the collective, so that they can distribute to all people as they believe is necessary to make everyone equal. You thought this was about black lives? I could have told you this wasn't about black lives a long, long time ago, but more specifically 2 weeks ago, when Black Lives Matter attorney Benjamin Crump, who represents all, it seems, of the families who have had some sort of grievance against police, some legitimate, for example, George Floyd, some not, for example, Michael Brown. Benjamin Crump has been the center of all of those things. And he was going to be at the center of the case of the killing of Nikia Crawford, a young girl, 18 years old, black girl in Akron, Ohio, just about 40 minutes south of Cleveland. Just a couple of weeks ago, when she was killed, shot while in the car with her mother, and Benjamin Crump thought that the suspect was a white male. He sent a letter to William Barr, the Attorney General, and said, "Mr. Attorney General, I demand that you dispatch federal authorities and agents to come here to investigate this hate crime against this 18-year-old black girl who was killed by this white male. We need to find him. I represent this family." 2 days later, the Akron police released the suspects' names. The suspects' names were of 3 African Americans in their early 20s. Not a white male, 3 black males. But that shouldn't matter, right? Because Nikia Crawford died. She was murdered, and she needs justice. Her family needs justice, right? No. Black Lives Matter attorney Benjamin Crump sped so fast away from the city of Akron, you could see the cartoon smoke behind him, as if he were on the Roadrunner show. I mean, he couldn't have gotten away from that situation faster. Suddenly, he's not representing that family. Why? Because a white male shooting a black teenager brings profit and fame. 3 black 20-somethings killing an 18-year-old black girl brings no profit and no fame. And Ben Crump couldn't leave fast enough. Her black life didn't matter. Her black life didn't matter because she wasn't killed by a police officer or a white person, like Ahmaud Arbery was down in Georgia. Senator John Kennedy, was asked on Fox News about the Squad's Breathe Act that I just detailed for you. This is how he described it.
I have looked at the Congresswomen's bill. It is clearly a serious effort to compete in the woke Olympics. I'd give it, 9.7. As an American who feels gratitude, not hatred for my country, though, the only way I know how to improve their bill is with a shredder.
Senator John Kennedy can always be counted on to put things into great perspective. My name is Bob France. I'll be back to take your phone calls on the Dennis Prager Show after this.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
This is the thing. It's a great mantra. It's a true mantra. Black lives do matter. But when you're talking about an organization, you're talking about the leaders. You're talking about the people who are responsible for putting these things together.
I got you. So let me put
different things.
Terry, you realize that even during the civil rights movement that Dr. King was seen as extreme. That movement was seen as extreme. To people who don't want to make change, movements are seen as extreme. You can paint them easily as an extreme when they are not.
This is very true. But also, when you're talking about MLK, you're talking about Nelson Mandela, and even Malcolm X, they all realized that you had to have a non-racial component to these kind of movements, or there will be resentment. There will be get back. There will be one of these people will tend to listen. I don't want to move from one oppressor to the next.
I really admire the guts that it must take for an actor like Terry Crews to go on with Don Lemon and say the things you just heard. He's been getting threats for that. I mean, it sounds to me, he sounds entirely, I'm a white guy. Those are two black guys having a conversation. One who is a far left, media voice, and a guy who I don't know anything about his politics, except he's decided that he wants to embrace all people. People have called him ignorant, and he's not backing down.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
GIs were coming back from Vietnam and being shouted at, called baby killers, being spat at the airport. I need you to understand that my nation will forever be grateful to those young Americans because you stopped communism in South Asia. My nation would have been the next one to fall, and the Vietnam War is a glorious memory for us. That's a wake-up call, isn't it, Jim? To look at the Vietnam War as glorious?
Well, yeah, from their perspective, and I think, look, no one is... There's two historians once had this debate between people that just lump history and then people that explore. And the whole thing is there's two ways you can write history. You can lump everything that proves your case and ignore everything else, or you can find the one thing that proves your case and ignore everything else. And those are called lumpers and splitters. But that's not history.
No.
History is about the totality. What the Antifa, what Black Lives Matter, what the hate, what the mob is they are lumpers and splitters. They find the stuff they hate and they say that is American history,
yes,
as taught by Howard Zinn,
yes,
right? And what they deny is that there was.
6 minutes before the top of the hour, Bob France in for Dennis Prager. Once again, I'm live in Cleveland, Ohio. Let's go where you are right now. How about... Trying to see who's been waiting the longest here and's got something really important to say. Ron is in Sarasota, Florida. Ron, thanks for hanging on. I appreciate that. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
How you doing, sir? Boy, my
I'm good,
little
sir.
conversation doesn't seem to make much after what you've been going through. The one thing with the Black Lives Matter is I think all people should just go on to their website and find out what they are and that would solve it. They've done a typical politician move and used word recognition. That way, everybody thinks they're doing somebody, and they're not.
No, they're not. They have a very specific agenda, and it has nothing to do with saving black lives. If it did, then the 22 people who were shot, almost all of them black in Cleveland over the July 4th weekend, would matter. The 77 that were shot in Chicago, almost all of them black, would matter. If they cared about black lives, they would be there for all of those things. They're not, because those don't advance their political agenda.
And the worst thing is, all those deaths, what were they contributed to? Con-19?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, Ron. What, all of those deaths, what?
What were all those deaths contributed to? Were they written off as murders, or were they written off as just another death for the coronavirus?
Oh, gotcha. You know, that's a great question. Seriously. I mean, people going into hospitals with gunshot wounds are automatically given COVID tests on their way in. And if they test positive, even if they're not sick or they're not symptomatic or anything else, they're marked down as a COVID hospitalization. And then if they die, yes, if you die with COVID, I don't care if you got shot or you got hit by a bus, you died with COVID. That means you died of COVID, according to the statistics. It's part of the way they are playing us. You're 100% right. Michael is in Tarzana, California. Hi, Michael. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I hear a lot of talk about what to do now that we've got China's virus. I hear very little about what we should have done and what we should be doing now to make sure this never happens again, to do something about their food markets, to do something to stop having them manufacture our products for us, to let them know that this is not okay and we're not business as usual.
Well, you know what? It's a great point, Michael. And, you know, I don't want to just turn this into a Trump commercial when I say this, but honestly, nobody is going to hold China accountable unless we reelect Donald Trump. He is the one who put the tariffs in place. He is the one who actually did something about the extraordinary trade imbalance that we suffered through for the last couple of decades. Donald Trump is the only one to hold them accountable. Joe Biden will lick Chinese boots to get back to the same restorative approach that we had before. You cannot allow that to happen. Thank you for the call. Hour 3 coming up.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was your house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom.
Bedwench.
Bootlicker.
Black white supremacist.
Chucking and jiving.
House Negro.
Coon.
Uncle Tom.
Coon.
I
have a Coon Award over there. Coon of the Year Award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist.
Racial.
Racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black?
America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No. Our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
It's
it's not just about money, money, money. It's about jobs, jobs, jobs as well. And we're going to discuss the latest news with our new regular guest, Trish Reagan. Let's play the video from just a few hours ago from the President of the United States. Eric, play video.
In June, we added 2.1 million leisure and hospitality jobs, 740,000 retail jobs, 568,000 education and healthcare jobs, 357,000 service jobs. These are all historic numbers. And 356,000 manufacturing jobs. And manufacturing looks like it's ready to really take off at a level that it's never been before. And a lot of that has to do with our trade policy, because we're bringing manufacturing back to our country.
Trish, did anybody expect the results we got today? Talk to us about what we have heard just a few moments ago from the president.
You know, listen, I was glad to see him out there. He needed to do that victory lap because people need a little good news right now, right, Seb?
Yes.
I mean, almost 5 million jobs that were added. This is really incredible. And you know what it tells you? The recovery is underway. We are going to emerge from this intact. It's almost like, you think about the Europeans, they like go away for the summer, they shut down for 3 months, and then miraculously their economy just boom, picks up right where it started. I mean, we're not right where we started, but we're getting there. And I could not be happier to see this news. Again, I was surprised that it was as big as it was. We got the ADP report just yesterday, which indicated it was going to be good. But this good?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
And we've had pandemics before. I've talked to you before about the 1968 one, where at least so far, adjusted for population, more people were killed, more Americans died then than now. And we didn't shut down the economy. We didn't mandate that people wear masks, let alone masks outdoors the way they've mandated out here in California. Dr. Mark Bloom is the president and CEO of the Houston Methodist Hospital. About the spike in coronavirus cases in Texas, here's what he said.
We're seeing a younger population that is both worrisome because, of course, that's what's been spreading through the community, but it's also encouraging. We have seen mortality decrease overall. It's about half of what it was running in the first surge. Part of that is age. A large part of that seems to be getting better, and really all the learning that's happened over the last 4 months or so of what we've been doing. That also means lower lengths of stay, which enables us to kind of manage this surge a little better.
So isn't this good news? Cases are going up. Deaths are going down. And then I hear every now and then on MSNBC and CNN, you'll find some pundit, some expert that will say that. But then nobody does a follow-up question on it. And then you hear, well, it's a lagging indicator. Right now, the cases aren't going up, but they're going to go up later on. So there's hope. There's hope. It may get worse. Keep hope alive.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Richard Nixon took on the media and had his vice president say a bunch of nasty things about the media. And the media disliked Richard Nixon intensely. But Richard Nixon was not able to convince large portions of the country of the fact, of the truth, and that is much of the media is relentlessly, intensely biased. By 5-1, 4-1 margin, reporters refer to themselves as Democrats or left-wing, self-admitted. You have the two arguably greatest, most important newspapers, and now websites, Washington Post, New York Times. And as I mentioned, Washington Post has never endorsed a Republican president, ever. Ever. New York Times, not since 1956. Not since 1956. Republicans have not advanced a single candidate that you felt was worthy of backing, not Not Ronald Reagan? Not George Herbert Walker Bush? Former chair of the RNC, former envoy to China, former congressman from Texas, former vice president for 8 years, second youngest naval aviator pilot in World War II, former ambassador to the United Nations.
Hour number 3 is now underway on the Dennis Prager Show. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Dennis is not in today. I am very honored to be here in his place. Bob France coming to you live from the PainFreeReliefFactor.com studios in Cleveland, Ohio, of my home station, which is AM 1420 The Answer. I am on the air every day, Monday through Friday from 9 to 11 a.m. You can listen live anywhere in the country by way of WHKRadio.com on your computer or your phone, or through one of the streaming services like iHeart or Radio.com, or through our free mobile app, which you can download if you'd like at 1420 The Answer. I'll also promote my Twitter and Facebook feeds. You can follow me and like my page and interact with me at France Radio on Twitter, Facebook, and Parler. France Radio is spelled Frantz Radio. That's enough of the self-promotion. Let's get back to the business at hand. I want to share, I'm going right to the phone calls after this. Two quick clips that I do want you to hear. As we discuss Black Lives Matter, the Marxist organization, admitted as much by the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, that it is a Marxist organization that has an ideology, an ideological bent to it that is not just about actually trying to save black lives or trying to achieve racial equality. That's not what it is all about. I want to play for you a clip from a sports talk show, a sports television show called Speak for Yourself. Marcellus Wiley was a longtime defensive player, very, very good one for the Buffalo Bills. He's now one of the talk show hosts. He's Harvard educated, for what that's worth. I say that because of the Ivy Leagues closing down their football seasons. Yesterday, they announced they're not going to have football at Harvard or anywhere else in the Ivy Leagues out of fear of the very, very, very low mortality rate holding Chinese coronavirus. Anyway, Marcellus Wiley was asked on the program whether or not he thought it was a good idea for Black Lives Matter to be painted on NBA courts when the season resumes on July 30th. His answer drew him a lot of scorn. It drew a lot of criticism because he's a black man. How dare he say no to Black Lives Matter being painted on an NBA court? Doesn't he know this is going to make him the star of the sequel of Larry Elder's movie? Yeah, Larry Elder, his outstanding documentary, setting all kinds of records in terms of its release. That was just released on June 19th. It is absolutely killing it in terms of success and in terms of critical review, highlighting and spotlighting the difficulty that black conservatives have in America, being called Uncle Toms, being called names worse than that. And Marcellus Wiley is now putting himself square in the crosshairs of those people who would condemn blacks for speaking their minds and not going along with the liberal Democrat Progressive Party line. Here was Marcellus Wiley's extraordinary response.
It's not a good idea. I do want to give the players credit for their flex to even get this to be more than just an idea, but something that's going to be in reality. I give the players that. But there's a problem with when you start to go down this road of the freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and how much social space is allowed for those who don't support in that same space. And that's where I wonder where this is going to go in terms of identity politics. We know what identity politics does. It divides and it polarizes. No matter how you want to look at it, that's just the effect of it, no matter how great the intentions are. And we all know the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's an interesting play right here. I don't know how many people really look into the mission statement of Black Lives Matter. But I did. And when you look into it, there's a couple things that jump out to me. And I'm a black man who's been black, and my life has mattered since 1974. And this organization was founded in 2013. I'm proud of you. But I've been fighting this fight for me and for others a lot longer. Two things. My family structure is so vital, important to me. Not only the one I grew up in, but the one I'm trying to create right now. Being a father and a husband, that's my mission in life right now. How do I reconcile that, what I just told you, with this mission statement that says, quote, we dismantle the patriarchal practice. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement. When I know statistics, when I know my reality, forget statistics. I knew this before I even went to Columbia and saw these same statistics that I'm going to read to you right now. That children from single parent homes versus two parent homes. The children from the single parent homes, this is in 1995, I was reading this. 5 times more likely to commit suicide, 6 times more likely to be in poverty, 9 times more likely to drop out of high school, 10 times more likely to abuse chemical substances, 14 times more likely to commit rape, 20 times more likely to end up in prison, and 32 times more likely to run away from home. I knew that. You know why I knew it? Because a lot of my friends didn't have family structures that were nuclear like mine, and they found themselves outside of their dreams and goals and aspirations. So when I see that, or as a mission statement for Black Lives Matter, it makes me scratch my head. When I also see their mission is to eradicate white supremacy. In 2020, white supremacy is the mission. Woo, that's a lot of digging through minutia right there. I am on a show that I'm hosting along with another black guy who is hosting with me, who replaced another black guy. And that's just one example of it. So I understand, I respect your space. I respect what you're protesting for. But will you respect others who don't support that same protest?
That was one of the most powerful and profound statements that I have heard from a public figure, a black public figure in the world of sports. Again, he's a retired NFL player and now a sports host on Fox Sports Channel. The part that he mentioned, it sounded like listening to Larry Elder quoting those statistics, doesn't it? Larry does that every night. Our friend Larry Elder can quote for you chapter and verse of what happens to children, particularly minority children, who grow up without a father, grow up in a single-parent household, about the rate of dropouts, rate of drug use, rate of going to prison, running away from home, et cetera, et cetera. Larry quotes those all the time. So does Marcellus Wiley. And yet, Black Lives Matter, the organization, the Marxist organization, wants to destabilize the black family. They want more black fathers to not be in the homes with their children. They want to disrupt, as you heard Marcellus say, the nuclear family that is the benchmark for a solid start to life. Raising children with the respect that they need to show an authority figure, which is usually the father of the household. If a child, black or white, grows up without a father in the house, without that heavy hand of discipline, hopefully and preferably in a velvet glove, of course, we're not talking about beating, we're talking about raising kids with discipline. If that father isn't there, the first authority figure in a child's life is missing. And when they don't have to respect authority in the home, where are they next going to not respect authority? Black or white, any color. That'll be in the schools. They will not respect the teacher. They will not respect the rules of the school. They will not respect the assistant principal who tries to bring discipline. They will not respect the principal. And when they don't respect the authority figures in the home, because there isn't one, or in the schools, because they didn't learn how to respect authority figures, when's the next authority figure they're going to encounter? It's going to be the police. And they're not going to respect the authority figure that is the police officer. And that's going to lead to confrontation. That's going to lead to what we see happening. And it's all Black Lives Matter can do to promote that very thing. Stacey Washington was on Fox talking about this very issue. She is also an African American. Listen to her.
We have cities on fire, children being gunned down in Atlanta and Chicago, Black Lives Matter making demands that the father leave the home, and all kinds of real issues that existed before we had coronavirus and dealing with the pandemic and getting Americans back to work and recreating the fantastic jobs market that we had before all of this began. Mm-hmm. So it's climate change and the progressive agenda don't dovetail into what Americans are concerned with. And I actually think it's great. Black Voices for Trump. I'm for the president. But it's not going to work well for him, Joe Biden, to come out and start talking about the progressive agenda when Americans are wanting to really get back to what we were doing before, which was working, earning, living, being free, experiencing liberty, and just being Americans.
So it's just, you heard her pointing out again, liberal Democrats have incentivized black men to leave the home for decades. By how do they incentivize that? By providing more and more and more free stuff for the woman raising the child alone, providing more assistance. It's better for her to not marry him because now she qualifies under income equality, numbers. I'm losing the word there that I'm thinking of, income benchmarks or whatever. But it's incentivized to not get married, to not have the father in the home. And then, oh, by the way, if you pop out another and another and another and another, the check goes up each and every month. All of this is done by liberal Democrats. All of it has been done to the black community by liberal Democrats, and we'll be right back.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindau.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Larry Elder, Rick in Metairie, Louisiana, a suburb of New Orleans. I just saw the video of your movie, brand new movie, Uncle Tom. I just wanted to tell you I'm as excited and as happy as I could be for you as a person, but thank you for what you do and keep doing it.
Larry, Uncle Tom was amazing, simply brilliant, so fantastic in every way, shape, and form. Honestly, my favorite part was Herman Cain and Carol Swain, but Herman Cain, so funny, so beautiful, made me laugh, made me cry. Great movie, great work, Larry. You're doing amazing things. Keep it up.
Larry, I just got done watching Uncle Tom, and I am so angry and sad that the Democratic tool of systemic racism has been so successful in putting up a wall between myself and my African American brothers and sisters in this country. We are all children of the same God. We are all brothers and sisters. Thank you for the work. It was amazing.
If only Trump could do an executive order to make Uncle Tom required viewing in every grade school or high school, especially in inner cities, it would be amazing. It was beyond great. It just reconfirmed what I already, knew. There are a lot of people that need to wake up, and you did a great job.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
So the Redskins are going to change. You and your pals have a suggestion.
We do. We think, wait for it, the Washington Redskins ought to become the Washington Fighting Admirals. And that may not leap off the tongue the way the Washington Braves or Washington Warriors or Washington whatevers. But think about it. Washington is, in fact, a naval town. You can turn right coming out of Old Town Alexandria on the river and be at the Atlantic Ocean in an hour or so, depending on the speed of your boat. Did you know this, Hugh? General George Washington originally wanted to be a British naval officer and actually applied for a commission in the British Navy. Think about how different our history would be if he had become a fighting admiral for the British.
Right.
Not
Don't
a good
forget
thing.
to click the
Not a
bell
good thing.
icon
And,
so you'll be
third,
notified
finally,
every
it's just
time
rich
we put
with
up a new
tradition.
clip.
21 minutes past the hour as we continue on the Dennis Prager Show. Bob Brandt sitting in for Dennis. Glad to have you aboard. Dial us up at 877-243-7776. That's 8Prager776. And I'll take your calls after I remind you that the coronavirus that has made financial markets unpredictable, it has not been a smooth ride for mortgage rates. Andrew and Todd are here to help you manage market volatility and help you get into a better financial situation. Many major banks and lenders are pushing back on purchase loans and suspending refi applications entirely, but not Andrew and Todd at Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They're clocked in and working remotely and ready to advise you on what's best for your situation. The decline in rates is fueling a boom in refinancing. If you're considering a refi, a new purchase, cash out refi, or reverse mortgage, don't wait on the sidelines. Rates are volatile. There's no guarantee they will drop further. Go to andrewandtodd.com today. Let Andrew and Todd help navigate these challenging times for you. Call Andrew and Todd at Sierra Pacific Mortgage, 888-1172. Or go to andrewandtodd.com and they will take it from there. Let's go to you and let you take it from here. We'll go to Matt, who's calling us from California in a city that I'm not terribly familiar with, so I'm not going to try to pronounce it here. I can bring him up. Matt, where are you calling us from, Matt?
Hemet.
Hemet. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was Hemet or Hamid or Hemet or whatever it was. But, Matt, it's good to have you on the air. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. You're doing a great job. I just wanted to say I'm a big believer in the power of branding, and Black Lives Matter has the perfect label, this perfect brand label, and it's the perfect political battering ram to push their agenda forward. And I think we need to counter, as conservatives, we have the better argument, okay, when it comes to black-on-black crime, school choice, fatherless homes, you name it. We're dealing with a bigger percentage of the black community, and we need to counter that label with something like all Black Lives Matter, because when Terry Crews said that to Don Lemon, he painted him in a corner where he was forced to fight against his own label and say that not all Black lives matter. He's not dealing with all Black lives. I think we need to stop saying all lives matter. I think I agree with it, but it's a tactical mistake. We should be saying all Black lives matter because it turns their biggest gun back on them and makes them argue against their own movement. And because, we, like I said, we have the better argument. We just don't have the branding. Conservatives, we're always so comfortable with having the right argument, but we suck at our packaging. We suck at our branding. And honestly, I think tactically, saying all Black Lives Matter would be the perfect counterpunch to Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, you're 1,000% right, Matt. And I have used that. I haven't thought of, like you have, to make it, the new branding, the movement, but I have said that when I have said Black Lives Matter, I have followed that with all Black lives. And what I've meant is including those unborn babies who are defenseless, the youngest lives among us. And I've said it including David Dorn, the police captain who was shot and killed trying to defend a store from looters and rioters. And I've said that about so many other individuals, like I mentioned, Nakia Crawford, the poor girl who was killed in Akron, Ohio. All of these, the 70-some people were shot and 14 or whatever of them that were fatal in Chicago this past weekend, and that goes on every weekend. All of their Black lives matter. And you're right. They do have perfect branding. And you want to know why they have it? Because this isn't new. This isn't something that just came organically after Trayvon Martin or after Michael Brown and his the ridiculous fairy tale that story they tried to spin was. This has been in the works for a very long time. The Revolutionary Communist Party in the United States, the Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement in the United States, the Antifa organizations, and now Black Lives Matter, they have long been trying to find the spark that they could use to make their move to destroy the capitalist economic system of this country. And now they found it. And they found it with the George Floyd situation. They've been trying to build on it, of course, since Trayvon and Michael Brown and so forth. But this particular one was their mark, and using Black Lives Matter, guilting or shaming people who won't say the phrase, that is exactly what you're talking about. Thanks so much for the phone call. But that is exactly right. It's perfect branding. Because if you say, I'm against Black Lives Matter, well, then you sound like you don't care about black people living or dying. And you become a racist in the eyes of those virtue signalers and those, who are part of the movement. So you can't say I don't like Black Lives Matter or I don't think Black Lives Matter. You can't disagree with Black Lives Matter because you're disagreeing with the idea of black people living. So what I always do is I always say Black Lives Matter, the organization, which is a Marxist political movement. It is a Marxist political organization that, quite frankly, is on the brink of being like Antifa, a terrorist organization in this country. So it's the organization. It's not actual black lives. So I love your idea. And when you say to a black person who says, do you think Black Lives Matter? Remember what happened to, for goodness sakes, who was it? Oh, it was Mike Pence. It was Mike Pence. He was asked, will you say Black Lives Matter? And he said all lives matter. I think it was a couple of other politicians too. I believe all lives matter, every single one of them. Well, you say that, they use that as you can't even say that Black Lives Matter. You won't even say it because you don't recognize the distinction between all lives and black lives, which are suffering so much more, which is so much hogwash, by the way. But you get called a racist for that. So I love your solution. Don't answer Black Lives Matter with all lives matter, which, by the way, should be totally non-controversial because you were saying all lives matter. Black ones, brown ones, white ones, red ones, yellow ones, purple ones, pink ones, green ones, doesn't matter. They all matter. So your solution is a great one. Answer Black Lives Matter with all Black Lives Matter, not just the ones that you choose to focus on for the advancement of your political agenda. All Black Lives Matter. Well done, sir. Very well done. San Jose, California. I knew how to say that one. Joe, you are on the air. Bob France sitting in for Dennis Prager. Thanks for joining us, Joe. Go right ahead.
How you guys doing? I think great show today, by the way.
Thank you.
Along the abortion issue, Kamala Harris is a prominent, prospective VP candidate. Mm-hmm. With Javier Becerra and her, they facilitated and enabled the selling and harvesting of baby body parts for Planned Parenthood. These are people who are also part of these think tanks in Palo Alto, and these are radical groups of social engineering types and funded by nefarious money that is anti our traditional way of life. You see, they try to paint Republicans and Christians that we're going to take away people's welfare, which we'll never do. We just want a merit-based system, and they want to obliterate that argument being at the public pulpit. We can't say that. We'd actually be much for, let's say, the pharmaceutical morning after pill within the first month than letting the poor baby gestate in the mother's womb into this harvesting, vampiristic, unspiritual, blasphemous thing that they are proposing, which is let the baby be born or, harvest these organs. This is ridiculous how they try to paint us conservatives that we're not reasonable, Yeah,
well, of course, you're 100% right. That is what they try to paint us as, and thank you so much for the phone call. Be not surprised by any of that. And some of the prominent people, like you said, Kamala Harris, they are going to be praised for standing up for reproductive rights rather than being made to acknowledge that those defenseless, innocent black lives don't matter. The ones in the womb. It's 29 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back. Yes, sir. So glad there was only one required Sierra Pacific there. The long one, too.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
no one suffered as much as Lincoln because of the war. His son died. He oversaw that. I mean, taking down Lincoln Memorial, Jim Talent, is just crazy.
It's scandalous. I can't criticize it enough. I think he was the greatest statesman in American history. His second inaugural address is one of the deepest reflections on both the spiritual level and the reflections of a statesman on the war. He reshaped the American Republic. He saved it, and he deserves all honor. And the people criticizing him don't know anything about him and couldn't hold a candle to him.
Lincoln did not set out to be an abolitionist, right? He did not set out.
He hated slavery. He used to say, if anything is wrong, slavery is wrong. And he wanted to get rid of it. But he knew that in order to get rid of it, he had to save the Union. So his first goal was to save the Union. He moved as quickly as he could against slavery, all things considered, and he was effective. He was able to do what the framers, who also wanted to get rid of it, could not do. And he deserves, and had anybody else been president, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think God raised him up. You and I have a similar worldview about, and I think had he lived, we would not be going through what we're going through today. I think he had that kind of wisdom.
Great.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
"34 minutes past the hour as we continue. That's, by my count, 26 minutes left of outstanding awesome on the Dennis Prager Show for this day. Bob Brand sitting in for Dennis. If you like what you've heard and the conversations we have been able to have over the course of the last 2.5 hours, you can listen to me daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So doing my math there, that would be, 6 to 8 a.m. on the West Coast. And all you got to do is log on to WHKRadio.com anytime you want to hear me, or look for me and look for WHK Radio, 1420 a.m. in Cleveland. Look for it on radio.com or the iHeart Radio app or anywhere else that you like. You can even just say to your Alexa speaker, if you have one, to listen to The Answer Cleveland, and you can tune in each and every day. Before I go back to the phone calls, I said something at the top of the show that I wanted to get to, and I said it was funny. I kind of said I'm going to start this show with the way Dennis ended yesterday's show. As I was listening to Dennis yesterday, he was talking about working hard and being nice, and what a terrible, terrible message that is. What a racist message that is. I said I was going to do that in the first hour. Here we are towards the end of this show, and I'm on it at about the same time. So apologies for that, but I do want to hit it real fast. Work hard, be nice. I'm trying to decide which of those is the most racially insensitive. Working hard or being nice. Because of the Black Lives Matter movement, it is a slogan that is being removed. It is done away with. It is gone for a charter school that had been using this for years. The KIP Foundation is a charter school organization. KIP stands for Knowledge is Power Program. I love that, by the way. Knowledge is Power. It's in New Jersey, apparently. Knowledge is Power program called KIP is retiring the slogan work hard and be nice because school officials believe it's counterproductive in abolishing systemic racism. Now you gotta really follow that for a second. Working hard, which is what I think we encourage everybody to do, young and old, work as hard as you can. Be nice. What's the golden rule? Do unto others, right? As you would have them do unto you. Be nice. That's not that difficult. Apparently, either one of the two of those or the combination of those two slogans is racist. Richard Barth, the KIP Foundation CEO, said in a press release after a letter from KIP co-founder Dave Levin about the ways in which the organization can change its culture, has decided to axe the slogan because it diminishes the significant effort required to dismantle systemic racism. In the letter, quote, "Over the last few weeks, we all have been working hard to turn words into action, recognizing that there is still much more work to do to eliminate any practice at KIP that furthers systemic racism or anti-blackness or inequities experienced by our students, alumni, faculties, teachers, and staff. Apparently, working hard and being nice is an indicator of anti-blackness." This is their wording, not mine. The letter is filled with all kinds of white guilt and how the CEO of the organization takes the blame for not doing enough to stop racial injustice. He said the practice of disciplining students of color makes them feel the practice of disciplining students of color instead of making them feel affirmed, uplifted, and celebrated was wrong. Quote, "In recent years, I have come face to face with the understanding that white supremacy doesn't just mean the public and hateful displays of racism. It applies to all aspects of the world that are set up for the benefit of and the perpetuation of power for white people at the expense of black, Latinx, and other people of color. Working hard and being nice is apparently part of white privilege." I wish I was making this up because there is no way to explain this with any sense of coherence or common sense. Unless the rules set in place at KIP are separate for white people and for black or Latinx or anybody else, I don't understand how it is perpetuating racism to tell everybody to work hard and to tell everybody to be nice. But to Barth, the idea of being nice and working hard offers too narrow of a future for children who might want to be lazy and mean instead of working hard and being nice to get what they want. This is one of those things that just makes you scratch your head until your fingers are sore. And we'll pick up your phone calls after this.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to to 11th.
along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Larry Elder, Rick in Metairie, Louisiana, a suburb of New Orleans. I just saw the video of your movie, brand new movie, Uncle Tom. I just wanted to tell you, I'm as excited and as happy as I could be for you as a person, but thank you for what you do and keep doing it.
Larry, Uncle Tom was amazing, simply brilliant, so fantastic in every way, shape, and form. Honestly, my favorite part was Herman Cain and Carol Swain, but Herman Cain, so funny, so beautiful, made me laugh, made me cry. Great movie, great work, Larry. You're doing amazing things. Keep it up.
Larry, I just got done watching Uncle Tom, and I am so angry and sad that the Democratic tool of systemic racism has been so successful in putting up a wall between myself and my African American brothers and sisters in this country. We are all children of the same God. We are all brothers and sisters. Thank you for the work. It was amazing.
If only Trump could do an executive order to make Uncle Tom required viewing in every grade school or high school, especially in inner cities, it would be amazing. It was beyond great. It just reconfirmed what I already knew. There are a lot of people that need to wake up, and you did a great job.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
So the Redskins are going to change. You and your pals have a suggestion.
We do. We think, wait for it, the Washington Redskins ought to become the Washington Fighting Admirals. And that may not leap off the tongue the way the Washington Braves or Washington Warriors or Washington.
This show is now available on live video streaming on Townhall TV, as well as our website. If you want to watch the show, not just listen, go to townhall.com and click on the Townhall TV button.
You know, is it just me, or does anybody else think that the suggestion that work hard, be nice is racist to children of color in this school is one of the most racist things ever? It kind of goes hand in hand with blacks can't, that requiring voter identification to vote is discriminating against blacks, and it disfranchises Black Americans because black people can't get IDs. It's one of the most racist things you can ever say about a group of people. You are less capable of getting a state identification than other people are. You just don't have the ability to do that. It is one of the most racist things ever, and the Democrats actually repeat it every election cycle. That's voter suppression, because you just don't want black people to vote by requiring them to have IDs. They're not as capable as non-black people of getting a simple identification. That's so racist. That's what I hear when I tell you this story. And if you just turn the radio on, by the way, for the tail end of the Dennis Prager Show, my name is Bob France, sitting in. That's what the vibe I get from this charter school eliminating their long-held slogan of work hard, be nice, because of its perpetuation of systemic racism and racial stereotypes. The slogan, according to the statement of the CEO, the slogan, work hard, be nice, places value on being compliant and submissive. Well, that's a terrible thing to do, right? To place value on is being compliant not another way of saying following the rules? Right? Being submissive means I am going to listen to the rules and respect the authority of the school, because that's part of life. We have to respect the authority and follow the rules of society, of our homes, right? But in their minds, that means you're being compliant and submissive in a negative way. It goes on to say, it supports the illusion of meritocracy. The work hard part indicates that if you work hard, you'll get great things. You'll achieve, you'll earn, you'll get what you want. Meritocracy. That's a terrible thing. Don't support the illusion of meritocracy as if meritocracy doesn't exist. And it just does not align with our vision of students being free to create the future they want, end quote. In other words, the charter school wants children, particularly children of color, to not have to follow rules, being compliant and submissive, not believe that working hard will indeed pay off for them in the end with meritocracy, so they should be able to do what they want and be as creative as they want with their futures, because that'll help get them a long way in life. In addition to the removal of the slogan, KIPP also plans to distribute grant money to communities most affected by the novel coronavirus from racial trauma, eliminating discipline practices in schools that officials determine to be inequitable, providing a senior equity officer, along with countless other actions. And I'll stop there, but it's essentially, this is the vibe I get. The vibe I get is the same thing with the voter ID thing. Telling people they have to have a voter ID is racist because black people aren't capable of getting identifications. It's nonsense. It's insane. It's incredibly insulting to suggest to a black person, we don't think you're capable of getting an ID, so we're going to make sure no IDs are required. And in the same way, we don't think young black kids are capable of working hard and being nice, so we're going to get rid of that slogan so that they can not work hard and be as mean as they want to be, because that's the future they want to create for themselves. Their virtue signaling is actually indicating their demeaning view of black Americans. They don't think that black people are capable of doing the things that white people or other people can do, so we're going to lower the bar. It's incredibly racist, and they don't even realize it. Let's get a few more phone calls in. We'll go to Houston, Texas. Is this my friend? Is this Will Power, if you will? One of the best social media handles ever is my friend Will in Houston. Will Power, as he is known online. Hey, Will, how are you, sir?
Hey, brother. Yeah, this is me, man. You know, I wanted to talk about one thing, dude, but then when I heard the story about this KIPP thing, dude, that just made my blood boil on a whole nother level, man. And it's almost literally like they want to create a permanent class of no matter how hard I work, no matter how hard I try, I won't accomplish nothing in life. It's almost like they want a permanent class of victims, man, and that makes me so mad, dude, because, you know, you look at folks like Ben Carson, who came from nothing, or a bunch of other prominent black doctors and lawyers, or whatever, who came from nothing. Imagine if they thought, it don't matter how hard I try, I'm not going to be anything. Dude, that's on a whole nother level of brainwashing that's just sick, man. And it really, I don't want to use the word I want to use, but it really makes me mad as a black person in America. You know, don't tell kids, no matter how hard work is not going to do anything for you. That's horrible.
Well, you know what I think of? You know what I think of, Will, whenever I hear that kind of thing? I'm reminded of that conversation that Morgan Freeman had with Don Lemon from years ago.
Absolutely.
When Don Lemon tried to get Morgan Freeman to acknowledge that life isn't fair to black people in America. They don't have the same opportunities that everybody else does. And that creates all of this, income inequity and this, that, and the other thing. And he said, right, to Morgan Freeman. You agree? And Morgan Freeman said, no, that's bull blank. He said the word on TV. He said, that's bull blank. And he said, you and me, we're proof. Here we are, two black kids who grew up poor in the South. And look at us. You're a millionaire on TV, and I'm a millionaire actor, and I'm paraphrasing them. But we are living proof that black people are not limited in this country any more than anybody else is. It is just a matter of what you choose to do with yourself. And so that's exactly what I'm hearing here. I agree with you, Will, that this charter school is telling young black kids, don't try because you can't succeed anyway. There is no meritocracy. You're just going to be discriminated against no matter what you do. That's the message they're sending.
It's insane, man. And let me throw in one other thing real quick, and then I get off. It's time, dude. It's time for conservative media to start fighting like liberal media and specifically what I'm talking about. Somebody on a national level needs to ask Joe Biden very, very specifically.
I got it, Jet. I'm sorry, Will. It's a hard break on the network. Final segment coming up.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody. Because he was black. You need to wake up.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
They can turn back voting rights. Didn't nobody donate to us the right to vote?
You was your house nigga. I didn't call you a nigga.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
You're Uncle Tom.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out by embracing the white man.
Uncle Tom,
Bedwench,
bootlicker,
black white supremacist,
chucking and jiving,
house Negro,
coon,
Uncle Tom,
coon.
I have a Coon Award over there. Coon of the Year Award. Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
I believe the legacy and the ancestry of black Americans is being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Racist,
racial,
racist,
racism.
1,000 cuts of racism.
The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people.
I never felt that because I was black or I was poor or a woman that I couldn't do something.
I grew up being told of my disadvantages, that this country is unfair to black people.
The ideology is implanted into you subconsciously to believe these things.
It's like a cancerous plague in the mind of black Americans.
We're brainwashed to think, well, is it because I'm black?
America's not ours, or we got shipped here. No. Our blood is on this soil. We own this too.
There should be a pride that we have in the fact that this country was built by many great black men and women.
Are you trying to say that this country does not specialize in racism and bigotry?
So long as black people continue to have their psyche filled by that nonsense, we won't have an awakening.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
It's not just about money. It's about jobs as well. And we're going to discuss the latest news with our new regular guest, Trish Reagan. Let's play the video from just a few hours ago from the President of the United States. Eric, play video.
In June, we added 2.1 million leisure and hospitality jobs, 740,000 retail jobs, 568,000 education and healthcare jobs, 357,000 service jobs. These are all historic numbers. And 356,000 manufacturing jobs. And manufacturing looks like it's ready to really take off at a level that it's never been before. And a lot of that has to do with our trade policy, because we're bringing manufacturing back to our country.
Trish, did anybody expect the results we got today? Talk to us about what we have heard just a few moments ago.
Okay, 6 minutes before the top of the hour, last segment of the program. I had to cut Will in Houston off, and I felt bad about that because I like him. He's a friend. He calls my Cleveland-based show. I do some radio in Houston from time to time as well, and he calls me there, and so I felt bad. And so I messaged him on Twitter just a second ago and said, what was the last part of your question? And he said, someone on a national level needs to ask Joe Biden very, very specifically, what does he think of trained Marxists and Marxism in general? That is a great question. Leave it very open-ended. Don't say, do you support Marxism, and give him a chance to say no. Ask him an open-ended question. What are your thoughts on trained Marxists and Marxism in general? Then we'll see how he feels before we tell him, because I'm sure he doesn't know. Then we'll see how he feels about the Black Lives Matter movement, which has been founded by admitted trained Marxists. Let's go to where? How about Craig calling us from Southfield, Michigan? Getting close to the end of the Dennis Prager show, but we got you in. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, real quick, Bob. Thanks. You're doing a great job. And while we're misappropriating credit and accountability in the culture, I want to thank you. Your last name's French. I want to thank you for the Statue of Liberty.
My last name is actually German because it's France, F-R-A-N-T-Z, France, actually.
But anyway,
just a bit outside.
Yeah, but thanks. But my question is do you think that this is eventually or going to backfire on the Socialist Democratic Party, who has been condescending and insulting to the black community? What makes me inspires the question is there's a Oakland County executive in the county that I live in who funded $500 million, I believe it was, to Planned Parenthood. And as soon as I heard that this guy did this, I thought of the genocide of the Margaret Sanger's agenda, and Hillary Clinton co-signing it and agreeing with it. That when they realize when the black community, these rioters, that they've encouraged the violence or co-signed it, what have you, when they find out who the true racists are and the people who have really just had the agenda to hurt the black community, do you think that this is going to backfire on them? That's my question, that the violence is going to come towards them.
Yeah,
because,
they're going to continue to push. I get it, Craig, and they're going to push and push and push until something actually proves that it will backfire on them. Look, they've been doing this for a very long time, and yet they still draw. What did Hillary get? 92% of the black vote. So they haven't had to pay a price for that yet. It hasn't backfired on them yet. And until Donald Trump or somebody pulls 13, 14, 15% of the black vote and they realize, oh my God, we actually have to start governing now properly, it never will. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of your day. Dennis is back tomorrow. Bye-bye.